Bex, welcome to my channel. I just want to start off by saying a massive thank you to my good friend Dave for putting together that awesome intro music for me. Dude, you are a legend. Thank you so much. For those of you that watched last week's video, I am very sorry for the lack of audio. I was having some serious recording difficulties, which basically left me sounding like a big man. My audio was really slow, and yeah, it kind of sounded like it had been through a filter. I'm not entirely sure what's wrong, but luckily it's fixed. So yeah, very sorry about that. I hope you enjoyed the video regardless. I did try to kind of subtitle it a little, but I know it's not as good as a voiceover, so yeah, sorry about that. So, on with the drawing. This week I wanted to do a kind of small, simple wildlife piece. I love animals, so these are always my favourites. This week I decided to draw a mongoose. Don't ask me why. They're just really cute. I have no idea. I love their little eyes. They have the strangest pupils. I never really noticed that their pupils were so unusual until I sat down to draw this wee guy. This is the first time I've drawn this type of animal, but I thought it would be good fun, and I definitely enjoyed the experience. Since I've never drawn a mongoose before, I wanted to start my sketch by trying to pay as much attention as possible to the large shapes and just kind of block in those features roughly, trying to get the proportions of the eyes and the nose right, and the snout as well. I tried at the beginning not to worry too much about details and things like that, and more just map in the kind of most important areas. I am quite guilty sometimes of adding detail too early and then realising that there are mistakes with the proportions and things, but then I find myself not wanting to go back and erase all of the little details that I've put time into. So yeah, I'm definitely trying to work on figuring out my proportions and making sure I'm happy with them before I move on to adding any extra detail. I don't really think I nailed it with this one, but I think it still turned out pretty cute, so that's fine. When I started working on this piece, I didn't know if I wanted to include any of the body or not, so I decided to include the front kind of paw in my sketch, but in the end decided to take that out because I really didn't know with the style that I was going in how it would fit into the composition. I just kind of thought it looked a little weird. So yeah, that had to go. When I was working out my initial sketch, I tried to pay attention to the direction of the hairs around the face and just kind of mark them in roughly. I didn't want to try and draw every little individual hair, but I wanted to make sure that when it got to the inking stage, I knew what direction the hairs should be facing. I think this is really important for drawing kind of furry animals, and it's something that I have definitely overlooked in the past, but it can add a lot to a drawing if you get the little things right. I decided to use Dr. P.H. Martin's Bombay Black India ink for this illustration. I tend to avoid line work when I'm painting, so I kind of wanted to do something a bit different today. I absolutely love India ink. It is amazing. It's permanent, so if you're using watercolours on the top of it, you don't have to worry about the ink spreading or bleeding at all, as long as you leave it to dry for long enough. And another thing I love about this India ink is that as far as black art supplies go, this is about as dark as it gets. So yeah, it's really nice for adding a lot of contrast, and it's a lot of fun to work with. To apply the ink to my sketch, I am using a dip pen. This is an art supply that I have very little experience with. I have ruined a couple of drawings that I've tried in the past to make with these, generally leaving big blobs of ink on the page or just making an absolute mess of the line art. These are quite finicky, and I don't really have many tips to share on using them because, as I said, I don't have enough experience to talk about it really. But I wanted to push myself. With it being October, I thought that this would be a really good opportunity to break out the inks and push myself to try something that I am not so good at. Before I went into inking my drawing with this, I actually grabbed a few post-it notes and done some kind of scribbles on them, just practicing with how hard to push down to kind of vary the line weight and things like that. I wasn't really sure how to tackle the line art for this, so I kind of used a mixture of inking techniques. I used a little bit of stippling and some hatching and things like that, but mostly just wanted to follow the lines of the fur that I had penciled in. And yeah, I tried not to worry too much about it, because at the end of the day, when you're using a supply that you're not that familiar with, you've just kind of got to experiment to learn. So although this was a challenge, I thought it was quite good fun, and yeah, I mean, I can see me using this dip pen again in the future. Hopefully, the more I use it, the more effective I will get at trying to use it and use it well. Another thing that I really like about working with India ink is that it's pretty fast drying. I am absolutely terrible for smudging ink and drawings and things, so yeah, the fast drying aspect of the India ink is definitely a plus point for me. I did manage somehow not to smudge this drawing as I was working on it, but that's something that's happened to me in the past quite a lot. I mean, I guess you do need to be mindful to kind of keep your hand off of areas that you've just worked on, but you know, within a few minutes you can kind of forget about it, so that's nice too. I did manage to mess up one of the eyes while I was inking. I don't really know what happened. Sometimes I think dip pens are quite hard to control, especially if you're trying to navigate around a corner or a curve, but that is more than anything down to my lack of practice and not the fault at all of my tools, so I just need to keep practicing. Once my ink is completely dry, you need to make sure it's dry or it will smudge everywhere, but once my ink was completely dry, I just used my kneaded eraser and took away all of that excess graphite. I decided not to ink the leg in the front because I just didn't think it really added anything to the composition, and at this stage I was really trying to work out how I was going to incorporate the metallic watercolours into this piece. So here they are. This is the Komorebi watercolour paint set. I've almost definitely butchered that name. So there's a few colours in here. We have a copper, a rose gold, a couple of other golds and a silver. For this painting I decided just to use the copper and the rose gold. I would like to try out the other ones in a future painting or piece, but as I said, I don't really know what to use them for, so suggestions are welcome. Stupidly, I left my camera in the wrong position, so we're just kind of getting the top of the head for this bit. Luckily, I did realise this a little bit later in and fixed it, but yeah, sorry. I'll get used to this filming thing, yeah. I wanted to make this quite loose and expressive. As I said, it was a bit of a struggle to know how to use these, so I really just wanted to see what the effect would be like, how the pigment would look when it was down on the page, how transparent it was, and of course how metallic it was, if it was nice and shiny or not. So I've basically just done a couple of layers. I wanted to create a kind of abstract background, nothing too fancy or exciting, just to see how these watercolours worked on their own. I started by laying down the rose gold and then added some copper on top. Once the first layer had dried, I decided to add a little watercolour to the face, but I didn't want to add an awful lot as I thought it would kind of take away from the contrast of the black ink on the white paper. I really like the consistency of these watercolours. They were quite creamy and, I don't know, I guess a little different from the watercolours that I am used to using. I found them to be not completely transparent. I think that's just by virtue of them being metallic. The sparkles and the metallic sheen is definitely visible over the India ink, which is something that you would never get with traditional watercolours, but I thought this was a really cool effect and they were a lot of fun to use. I could see myself using them again in future. So to finish up, because I had made mistakes in the eyes, I am using a couple of Posca pens just to fill in the gap and correct those mistakes. Posca pens are acrylic paint pens. I absolutely love them and they were really good for this project. As you can see, they are very opaque. So yeah, covered up that mistake really nicely and definitely disguised it. And because I'm using a dip pen and it's a complete novelty, I of course had to sign my name at the bottom of the painting, which is something I never normally do. Okay, so here is the finished painting. I wanted to lift it off the paper and rotate it about to give you a chance to see the metallic effect and the lights. I think this effect is really nice and definitely adds a bit of interest to the piece, especially for a pretty simple ink drawing. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with this. I'd like to try it again in the future. Let me know if you have any ideas for anything you would like to see me make with them. And of course, thanks as always for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification button if you enjoy my videos. I greatly appreciate it. Have an awesome day. Bye!